Hello, it's me, Coco, and today I am back from a little bit of a break that I took from YouTube because I went to the front lines of line 3, and today I kind of wanted to sit down with you and talk a little bit about how that went and how I'm feeling and how maybe things might change a little bit moving forward. So let's go. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about how I ended up at the front lines. I came to the US for what I thought would be 3 or 4 weeks, and in the last week I learned about line 3, and the week after that I got myself to the front lines, and the training that I had gotten basically told me to just kind of show up because there were so many people who were interested in coming that they didn't have enough time to tell everybody where to go. So I went to a camp called Shell, and then the day after that, the Treaty People Walk for Water was passing by nearby, and a friend at Shell said, "Hey, the Treaty People Walk for Water is coming. Do you want to go join them?" And I was like, absolutely. And as soon as I got there, I knew that that's really where I wanted to be because it was really action-oriented. And my whole goal of going out there was to spread the word. And on the walk, I found a lot of community and a lot of people just talking about what was going on, and I was able to learn so much. I have to tell you, it was like drinking from a fire hose. And I really wanted to tell you guys about everything that I was learning, and yet also there were so many challenges. There was not good Wi-Fi at all, which was a big reason why I wasn't able to create too much content for you all. And there wasn't really that much time either. I really just had time for the walk and self-care and for making some TikTok videos. And so I mostly transitioned to TikTok because making those videos took a lot less time and data than making a YouTube video. So if you want to see more about what I was up to there, you can follow my TikTok. I'll leave my handle here. And then I don't know if I'll be able to link. Maybe a link is here. We'll see. So you can check out kind of all I was up to, mostly on TikTok. When the Treaty People Walk for Water ended in the capital of Minnesota, St. Paul, we went to the Capitol building to ask the governor, Tim Walz, to end line 3. And, you know, instead of a meeting, we were greeted by police officers. We were greeted by chain link fences. And this was all after we were peacefully marching into the Capitol. It was very peaceful, very prayerful. That was the whole point of the walk. And it was really, really, really heartbreaking to see democracy pan out like this in the US. And I'm a bit upset about it, but I know that there are a lot of people who've been fighting for a lot of different causes who are not surprised by it at all, you know, like almost unfazed. But what I saw was America becoming a country where corporations have more power than the people, and they can pay off the police, they can pay off the state, and they can get away with murder. They can get away with a lot of things. So, you know, that was really, really hard to see. And then after that, there was a group who wanted to keep the walk going. And so we decided to walk from Bacchus, Minnesota, where the original Treaty People Walk for Water had diverged from the line 3 pipeline route. So we went from Bacchus all the way to the end of the pipeline, which was in Wisconsin Point in Superior, Wisconsin. I didn't walk the whole way, but I did see a lot of destruction that Enbridge made to the land, and it's really heartbreaking. And there were people, you know, we got a mix of reactions from people who would drive by. There were some people who were pro-pipeline, and I have a strong suspicion that they are employed by Enbridge or are close to somebody who is, and they see the pipeline as an economic lifeline in the community, as though there were never going to be any other economic lifelines, as though clean or green energy is never going to create jobs. But of course they don't think that it will, because Enbridge is telling them everything they know. Anyway, there were also a lot of people who were not able to participate, but were very grateful to see us walking for their water, because ultimately we're not only fighting for Indigenous rights and for water for the Indigenous people. which is super important. But we were walking for everybody's water, including the water of those end bridge workers, the water for those police officers, and the water for all those people who were had less than kind things to say to us on the road. There were families who came out and said, thank you for walking. And there were some people who didn't know why we were walking. And when we explained it to them, they were so touched. And there were also people who had been fighting in the community for clean water against Enbridge, against the pipeline. And seeing us walking really made them feel okay about the work that they did. When ultimately, I mean, it's really sad. It's very dark because at the end of the day, the Line 3 pipeline went in the ground and the tar sands are flowing today, despite all of the efforts that everybody did, not just on the walk and not just on the actual front lines, but this goes back years and years, 8 years, when Enbridge started to want to build this pipeline. So that was my experience there. And I was most recently in Washington, D.C. for the People versus Fossil Fuels actions. And that was also interesting. We didn't get as much of a militarized response from the police in Washington, D.C., which was a really big relief because the police in Minnesota were awful. They did bring out a long-range acoustic device, and I will put a link in the description box of a TikTok from one of the water protectors who made a video about it. And it's just very shocking that they will use acoustic weapons against people who are demonstrating, protesting, using their First Amendment rights about water, of all things. A weapon against, I can't. So one of the things that was the hardest for me to see was the police brutality, and the brutality that, you know, people are willing to unleash on innocent people for what? So first, there's the police brutality at the front lines, where unarmed protesters who might have a thing or two to say about police and who might not are being violently arrested for what I would think would be minor infractions, like standing in the wrong place. And then there are people who are doing more extreme things, like locking themselves to equipment in order to stymie the construction schedule. And those people are getting charged, get this, with grand theft, felony offenses. They're just escalating the charges and escalating bails up to like $8,000, maybe even more now, to get some of these people out of jail for their arrests for a completely nonviolent action. Meanwhile, the government is turning a blind eye. I could talk around and around and around about this. That was police brutality at the front lines. The police must know who they're coming up against. If they have like any sense, if they have any intelligence in the agency at all, they know that we're coming as peaceful protesters, that there's no alcohol, there's no weapons, there's nothing, we're not coming to hurt anybody. And yet they come with full riot gear. Full riot gear on the day that we walked in. And then on the next day, when the police came to request that the indigenous people take down a teepee that was set out on the lawn, where they were performing a religious ceremony, which is protected by the Constitution, I believe. There's a like Freedom of Religion Act of 1978, but they're free to practice their religion. So they were praying, they were doing some religious ceremonies in a teepee. I don't need to know, I don't want to know what exactly they were doing, but the whole point of them being in the teepee was so that it can be kept private. And the police came, 200 police, 200 in full riot gear with gas masks, batons, guns, tasers, and even they were all wearing bulletproof vests. For what? We weren't going to shoot them. So they were fully planning for a fully violent interaction. And here we are, just trying to allow some people to pray in a teepee. These are our tax dollars going to that. I mean, I don't pay taxes in Minnesota. So those are the Minnesotans' tax dollars going to that. Completely ridiculous. And then I saw them take down some protesters. If any little thing set them off, they would have had those batons, they would have been going. You could just see. You could see that some of them didn't want to be there, and then you could see some of them like really wanted to be there. And it was just too much. And then we have the police brutality in Washington, D.C. So I already mentioned the long-range acoustic device. They're also arresting people for just standing on the sidewalk. I kid you not, for blocking the sidewalk. And all of this because we're trying to raise our voices for climate action. To literally save the world from like bursting into flames. It's just too much. That was really tough for me to see because I travel a lot. I've lived as an adult in many different foreign countries, and I used to feel really proud to be American. And now, after seeing what's becoming of democracy, and seeing what the government is willing to do for profits, and this is, I mean, it's nothing new, but I saw it with my own bare eyeballs. I really have my doubts about that. And then there are a couple things that I didn't know. I'll start with the good stuff. So the first one is the wild rice. So the whole reason why the Anishinaabe people are there in the first place is because originally they were kind of in like the New York area, and then there was a prophecy that they go to where the food grows on water. So they migrated westward and found the wild rice in the Superior Lake region. And now the Anishinaabe people are all around that region, and wild rice is super, super critical to their culture. And that was one thing that I don't think I really fully understood before I came there and saw what a big deal it is to them. So there's ricing season, and then they're passing down the traditions to the future generations. All of this is super important. And the wild rice that they have there is very different from the cultivated rice. Cultivated rice, you'll see, is solid black. And that's not as good as the actual wild rice, which is kind of more of like a mottled brown color. And that wild rice will take up the nutrients of whatever water it's growing in. And so every area has a different flavor. It's magical, really. If you have the chance, you can buy some wild rice. It's not cheap because it's processed by hand and it's very labor intensive, but I'll leave a link below to a site where you can buy some if you want to try it yourself. And also support an Indigenous organization that's fighting Line 3. Another thing that I wanted to talk about, missing and murdered Indigenous women. Did you know that Indigenous women are 10 times more likely to be murdered than any other race? Recently, there was the case, and it's very sad. My heart goes out to the family of Gabby Petito, going missing. But in that region, hundreds of Indigenous women have gone missing without anybody batting an eye, apparently, without it reaching the mainstream media. This has to stop. And so I think it's really important for us to remain aware of the missing and murdered Indigenous women and relatives, and I'll leave a resource down in the description box for that as well. But it's happening all around. And here's the connection to Line 3 construction. Where there is construction, there are workers, usually male, and they set up these man camps. Where there are man camps, there's usually sex trafficking, human trafficking in general. And where there's human trafficking, we will find missing and murdered Indigenous women. So supposedly there have not been any human trafficking busts in the area around Line 3 that didn't include 2 or more Enbridge employees. That's pretty scary, especially as a woman myself. These lives matter, and so whenever you hear people talking about MMIW, MMIR, please share and interact with the content so that it's able to spread, because I think that awareness is one of the things that is needed the most. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is the residential schools. So this is something I think we've all kind of known about, and we're just now kind of realizing, and by we I mean people who are not Indigenous, or maybe I'm just talking about myself, but just kind of realizing the depth of the the magnitude of the issue. The residential schools are basically created in order to commit cultural genocide and to beat the culture out of the children there. Many of them perished and never came home. I didn't grow up in an Indigenous community, and so I think I really did take for granted how much there's like lasting ripple effects of the residential schools in the Indigenous community, and that ripples out to all of us. And so again, when you hear people talking about it, and feel free to do your own research about the issue and learn on your own about it, but it's really something to take very seriously. And when Indigenous people are calling for governments to take accountability for what they did, it's really important to stand with them and let the world know that we have their backs. The last thing that I want to talk about is just thinking about my content going into the future. Seeing all of these terrible things really put my life into perspective, put my content into perspective. I'm thinking about incorporating activism into my work. However, as some of you guys know, if you've been here for a while, I'm not an activist. Like, I am an activist, but like, that's not my main jam. And so I invite you to come with me and grow and learn with me, because I'm going to be looking for ways to weave activism into my work here on social media and into my everyday life. So thank you so much to those who have kept in touch with me, who checked in while I was not posting. Thanks to those who were following me and supporting me on TikTok, especially some of my content creator friends. And shout out to Emma from The Simple Environmentalist, because she has been doing really, really, really great work with the #Glitters for Change campaign, reaching out to companies and to businesses that she wants to see make some eco-friendly changes. And she's definitely an inspiration to us all. So definitely go check her out if you haven't already. But that's all I have for you today. I have some fun stuff coming up in the future, and so stay tuned on this channel for more vegan, sustainable, self-care lifestyle stuff, but with a spicy activist twist. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.